I think all the councillors around here have taken this extremely seriously, and I think it is very unfair to imply that anybody is only in a box ticking situation. Councillor Dick focused on the governance role around the importance of the conditions precedent, and those are very major issues. I note that it has been suggested that we should be inquiring as to why a particular condition precedent is there, and that means actually demanding information of some of the investors, which I believe is outside our scope. And we do have to accept that that's the condition going forward. That condition actually has to be met. It should be of no surprise to anyone what information is going to Deloitte's, because we as a council approved the terms of reference, and it was quite plainly set out in those terms of reference, Mr Chairman, what was involved. And therefore any councillor who goes back and looks at what decisions they have made in the past will find what the process was along the way along this. And certainly that detail, we asked Deloitte's to be totally robust in their analysis of the case, and we always have to accept that in a commercial decision there are going to be some things that are commercially sensitive, and that it is not our place to actually force people to share that, and that is allowed for under the Local Government Act, and it's allowed for under the Resource Management Act. That commercial sensitivity should be respected and treated as with such. So I think that what we have heard today is we received this case to get some clarification for our own sake around it. We're only starting on a process. We are waiting for an independent assessment of the business case so that then we can, with full knowledge, actually question whether we go forward with the step of then going out to consult the public. So we've still got a long way to go. We've got a number of steps yet to be taken in this, and I think that the process will be a very detailed one, and it will be a very robust one. And again, in summing up, I would like to thank the board for coming and presenting the information to us in a very clear manner today.
Thank you. Well, I'll put that motion, and all those in favour please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Show of hands. You want division? Show of hands, and all those in favour. And opposed. Got that. Thank you. Thank you.
Move an additional motion, and that would be in relation to this piece of paper that the Regional Council requests Deloitte's in their report on the RWSS project to consider, where appropriate, and report to the Council on matters A, B, C, D, E, F.
I'll second that to expedite any further discussion.
I just believe it meets the objective, I would hope anyway, of
I believe it sets out what's being done. Any other speakers? I'll put that motion then, subsequent motion, which is unusual. Councillor Dick, I'll signal that right now, but there you go.
It's quite legal.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. 2 no. 2 no. 7 versus 2, I think that's a positive and affirmative, so thank you.
Chairman,
sign of things to come.
Could I make a comment at this point?
Very, very brief comment in parting, Mr. Chairman. Order, everyone, please. Order.
Could I just inform councillors that Deloitte's have already been provided with a cash flow model, which includes variations of demand and uptake in many of the matters that are set out in here. That is already in their hands, and it was part of the brief that they were asked to consider. I don't believe they'll be in a position to consider an alternative uptake scenario where it's less than 40% initial uptake. but they certainly will be able to consider, because it is explicitly in the information already provided to them, a range of ramp up above 40%. The 40% threshold is based on the minimum cash flows required for other investor parties. So I think the rationale for why that number has been chosen is eminently clear, and I have absolutely zero expectation that any other party will be willing to contemplate a level below that as a starting point for the uptake, although they might be willing in conditions precedent. If it turned out that 39.9% had been signed up, they might be willing to waive the 40% to go to 39.9%.
Might they expect to be 50?
Well, that's an upside scenario.
But we're not in debate here, just a parting comment.
And so the majority of the information that is requested here, including a copy of the water user contract as presently envisaged, has already been provided to Deloitte's. Because nobody asked me.
Thank you. Right, let's finishes that particular paper, and let's hope that fixing the common seal doesn't take quite so long. Thank you, gentlemen, and please, if available, come and have lunch with us with the Ngāti Kahungunu board at 12:30 if you're otherwise occupied at the moment. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councillors.
Okay. Affixing the common seal, which is on page 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a very brief, just an update there. 5 leasehold land sales in the last time period, and a grant of easement for a pedestrian and cycleway.
Just Councillor Scott.
Deed of easement, Mr. Chairman. Whereabouts is it? What's that? Which whereabouts is that? It says Fern Hill, but what cycleway around there?
Look, I can't.
Perhaps you can. I can get that information later.
Can you enlighten us, please, Mr. Adey?
Is it something? Is it pertaining to the wineries ride?
He may. Sorry, I put you on the spot there, Mr. Adey. You may not know. Okay.
Do you mean there's things you don't know?
Mr. Chairman, maybe that can just be.
Could we get some information back on that? Yeah, fair enough.
That when these properties come up, that there's sort of like a map put up so we can see them. The description, so on, is very hard for someone to know what it is. I just think that this council staff would have it, just so when the papers come out, there could be a description of it and a link, and it's sort of like an aerial photograph of, just to show it, so we can check it for us. Just got any interest or not? At the moment, we're flying blind on this. I don't understand these numbers a lot. I know there's properties, but with me for each one, they just on the website have a link to show where they are. I like that.
Affixing the common seal is just procedural, but let's explore that.
Yeah, the council is selling land here, isn't it?
Yeah. So it'd be nice to know where it was.
And so the council is selling land. I would just like to know where it is.
Yeah.
Identifying individuals, I think that would be.
Let the chief executive digest that and come back. Yeah. Order, everyone. Order, everyone. Please. Okay. Any other questions around this particular paper? Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Seconder, Councillor Barker. Thank you, sir. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. We've got 15 minutes. Let's go now to item 9, recommendations from Corporate Strategic Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The recommendations that were made at the committee are set out on pages 20 and 21 of your main agenda. There were 2 matters that really required some further work from council staff, and those are now brought back to you for your information. The first of those, which I'll ask Mr. Adey to talk about, was some amendments. There were a number of amendments agreed at the Corporate and Strategic Committee to the top 10 risks for council, and those are attached on the immediately following the agenda, so still in the same same block of paper. Perhaps we'll just take questions on those because Mr. Ailey's here to answer those as well.
So let's deal with the risk description to start with. Any questions on that following our discussion the other day? Councillor Scott.
Yes, I have. I'm sorry, can you give me a page number of where those are set out?
Page 23. Oh, I'll start on page 23.
Of the agenda or
the main agenda, not the attachment.
Okay,
yeah.
Gone through the attachment. That's why I didn't find it. Trouble with iPads, Mr. Chairman, is you can't open two papers at once.
It's a bit like that. Any other questions while Councillor Scott's negotiating the technology? Councillor Pipe.
It was just a question with regards to the format. I do like the format that we've changed the risk statements to. I wondered why that it hasn't been done on all of them, particularly the co-governance and natural resources statement. I wondered whether there was a need to actually reformat that, or were people quite happy with that?
Yeah, I've had a look through them. I think the general concept was to turn them into something that was either neutral or at best positive rather than a negative statement. And when I look at co-governance specifically, I didn't feel that that was terribly negative, so I've left it as it is. But any comments, welcome.
I guess my only suggestion was if you're starting all the risk statements with the word if, you could change it a little bit.
Okay, fair enough.
And take out failure to achieve and maintain, put then effective working relationships could potentially lead to fragmentation of governance.
Okay.
That's all. Just keeping it standardised, although I noticed in risk 6 the same sort of thing has happened.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions, Councillor Scott?
I'd just like to raise an issue under risk issue 7, and that is if the RWSS does not proceed, we should actually, I think, be quite proactive at this stage in starting some risk management, because if the plan change, and we have to assume that because the flows were not challenged, those minimum flows are raised, and therefore security of supply of water is seriously compromised, we actually have to look at how we implement that in terms of managing the downturn in the economy that will result. And I think at the moment it's a wait and see. We don't know until the plan, but I don't believe that we can now park this risk for 6 months and not revisit it. And I would actually like to see this particular risk probably monthly addressed until we actually know where we are with managing that. I would suggest that there was evidence produced in the EPA of a serious downturn in existing jobs on the line, and that evidence is well recorded, and you can go back and read it. So it's not just that the economy won't get what the scheme might be suggesting, that security, loss of security to supply has to somehow be managed. And we do have a Tuki Plan Change implementation plan, but maybe we actually have to look at how we manage it in the light of a plan change. So rather than just say, yep, we approve these and we put them away again, I think this particular risk actually needs monthly monitoring.
So you'd like to see that come back to council every month?
I'd like to see that
as a regular feature until it's...
I think we need to actually
proven one way or another.
something around the mitigation, how we're going to mitigate against that. And I suggest we refer to the Tuki Plan Change implementation and how we're going to manage that going forward should there be that decrease in security, dramatic decrease in security of supply. There was no challenge to the minimum flows, so we have to accept they will go up.
Chair, I support what Councillor Scott's saying. I think it's a fair point to raise. And just out of interest, if Plan Change 6, well, the final form of Plan Change 6 is going to be determined by the EPA process, what's the date of the start of that plan versus the date of the completion of the dam, for instance?
The plan change becomes effective immediately itself, although there are dates within it that, the trigger dates as part of that. So not every part of it becomes effective immediately.
Right. So we've potentially got 2 to 3 years where we've got some, if we have dry summers, we've got some significant problems out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the minimum. Yeah. Minimum. Yeah.
It's 5 years.
Just what can I just perhaps answer Councillor Scott's point then? Can I make a suggestion in relation to that? This risk issue 7 was initially around about the financial risk to council. I think what you're putting forward is a broader risk to the region, and can I suggest that we frame it up as a separate risk on its own?
I'm just reading the risk as it states if the RWSS does not proceed. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Balfour.
I agree also with the need for the work, but I would frame it a little differently. There seems to be a prevalent knee-jerk reaction that Central Hawke's Bay goes down the toilet if this dam isn't built. And I think there's a fair number of people in the community who feel that there are, in fact, other things that could be done. And I would hope that if we're going to initiate a process like this, we'll give full scope to what other of those possibilities might be and what their expense might be, whether they belong in a long-term plan, for example, if that were to be the contingency we had to deal with. So I'm just noting a minor objection here to the presumption that it's represented in all the materials we receive about this dam, but as I say, there are plenty of people who feel otherwise about the prospects of Central Hawke's Bay.
Notes taken. Okay. Others? Other risks? Happy with the amendments here? Can we go back to the recommendations then, perhaps?
Can I just then perhaps have give you an explanation of the second point, which was around the Appointments Committee or the establishment of an Appointments Committee to recommend the appointment of directors to the Permanent Board of HBRIC. You'll recall that this came about through discussion on the item around an appointment and remuneration of directors policy, and I asked for suggested names from councillors. I received 5 names, and one of those persons I felt should not be considered because that person is currently a director of the port, and I just wanted to be quite clear that there was no conflict there. So the names that have been put forward represent the four that I was able to consider. I've spoken to all of them. Perhaps apart from you, Councillor Dick, I'm sorry, I did speak to you. But I've certainly spoken to the others to check their availability, and so those names have come forward as part of the final recommendation. So I'll take you over to pages 20 to 21 to those recommendations, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. But I'm happy to answer any questions on those.
Yeah, I do have a question. Maybe remiss of me, but I don't have clearly in my head a request for me to submit names for this particular committee. It must have, I didn't have that. And when I was at the meeting of their last this month, I had left with the impression that we were going to make a decision about who the names are going to be at some later meeting. I didn't. And so when it appears in the recommendations here today, it came to me as a complete surprise. Having said that, I would welcome the opportunity to make some alternative suggestions in 1 or 2 areas.
Of people, you mean?
Of people, yes. And I thought that I had that opportunity coming up at some later meeting, like the next meeting. So I may have missed it. I'm getting the chair is smiling at me, saying yes. Yeah, we missed it, but I do 3 things at once normally, but I didn't see this. I thought it was going to come up at a later meeting rather than here. You with me?
That's how I apprehended it. Must have misapprehended it.
Chair, I didn't attend that particular meeting, and I certainly didn't get any notification inviting me to put forward any names. So I don't believe we've ever been circulated with that invitation. It must have been a verbal one on the day.
Oh, look, I need to double check, but I'm almost sure I put it in the actual committee agenda paper, asking for names to be submitted. But look, I do stand to be corrected on that.
Madam Chair, can you remember that?
Councillors were invited to submit names to the Chief Executive following the meeting.
Okay.
I recall that as well, but like Councillor Barker, I did not at all have the impression that it was going to be moved at this point, that there was going to be an opportunity to discuss, the various people. You might have 12 names, and that there would be a discussion to winnow this down and arrive at whatever balance we thought was appropriate. So I also had the feeling when I saw this, first of all, it seemed to be represented as recommendations from this committee, which it clearly is not, but also that there would be some ventilation of names at some point.
There's a simple solution as we get into the recommendations to leave recommendation 8 on the table until, and in 3 weeks' time it goes back to corporate strategic. Sure. Is that a level of comfort in that?
Very comfortable.
Okay. So someone happy to take us to the recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, so can I perhaps just confirm now on camera that any further names or suggestions would be welcome?
Can I confirm on camera that you'll have my email shortly?
In about 5 minutes' time.
About 5 minutes, yeah. Councillor Barker.
I have a question. Yes. Not ready to move. 11.3 and health and safety. I think that's a little bit once over lightly in terms of our discussion in corporate and strategic, and quite clearly there was an action that further follow-up was expected from Viv, the health and safety man. And the importance of health and safety to us as councillors and making sure that our staff members get home safely to their loved ones every night was quite resoundingly stressed during that meeting. So I don't really want to see that once over lightly. There was an action there.
And thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, so the process is that it's noted that those reports are received by council, but the follow-up actions and the commitment that we've taken to report on that regularly come through your committee and are dealt with that way. But they're just formally adopted so that they're on the council minutes.
Councillor Dick.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, could I just comment in regard to my name being there that I will not be offended if other council nominations are to be made. I'm happy to do it, but I won't lose any sleep if I don't. And the other thing it points out is that I don't intend in the future to be a candidate for directorship of HBRIC. Right. I've done my hard yards there.
The heavy lifting. Thank you. Someone happy to take us to the you have another question?
I'll ask a question on the policy. Is my reading of it correct that the way this policy reads now, is it here? That councillor appointees to HBRIC are to be paid similarly to non-council. I thought we had. It's in here somewhere. I can't find it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's on page 50 of the main agenda, councillor.
Where is that? I don't see it there.
Sorry, paragraphs 36 and 37. 37. Are you talking about remuneration of HBRIC directors, councillor?
Yes, 37,
yep.
With no distinction made between independent and councillor directors. Is that?
That's correct, and that's in relation to the assessment of fees. It doesn't mean to say that fees are paid, but it means that there's an assessment of fees done that does not differentiate between council and independent directors. Whether or not council choose to then pay its council directors is another matter that has to come back to council.
Permissive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's permissive, but it will be a council decision. Yeah.
That's exactly as I read it.
Yeah.
Permissive but council decision. Okay.
I'll move, with the exception of recommendation 8.
You leave recommendation 8 on the table, but you move the rest in block. Okay, seconder for that. Councillor Pipe, you happy to second that? You wish to speak, Councillor Hewitt?
I think that with regard to this discussion we've had just now, that this pretty adequately discussed, covers off our discussions on the day for corporate and strategic, so I'm happy to leave it at that. Thank you.
Seconder. Other speakers? I'll put that motion in. All those in, all those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. As indicated this morning, I will adjourn the meeting, but our discussion with our visitors here is not a private discussion, so if anyone wishes to stay, that's fine.